How are we doing, everyone? I hope you're all doing better than I am, as your boy is running on virtually no sleep ever since the new baby arrived. But you know I had to keep the hot take series running, especially since my uploads have been less frequent. So drop a like on this video to keep the YouTube algorithm going while I'm on my paternity leave hiatus. And of course, if you're new to the channel, every week, maybe not so much recently, but every Wednesday I do a series on your Bulls hot takes and my reaction to said takes. And now that we're in the off season, well, the off season for the Bulls anyway, we got some pretty good hot takes. I guess I should say they're very hot that I'll go through in this video. So what's going on, everyone? You were listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Our first take comes to us from Weird at Dusk. We should trade Lavine for Anthony Davis, run Lonzo, DeMar, Pat, Davis, and Vuce as our new starting five, with Caruso, Coby, Ayo, and Tristan forming the heart of our bench. So I've seen a lot of these trades for Zach and for AD proposals recently, and I've never really addressed it on any of my videos despite people asking me about it in my DMs because, first of all, it's not going to happen. And second, as much as Anthony Davis is a beast and is a better player than Zach Lavine when healthy, that's the most important piece there, when healthy. And for Anthony Davis at this point, that's becoming more and more rare for him to actually be healthy. And I know some people would say, well, Zach is injury prone as well, but really he isn't, actually. He's been much more durable and available to play in games than someone like Anthony Davis. And as AD has aged, he seems to be getting less and less durable, and availability is everything in this game in the NBA. Anthony Davis is going to be 30 next year. He's under contract until 2025, a max contract, I might add. And sure, Lavine is likely going to be on a max contract as well, so you're essentially trading a max contract of Lavine for Anthony Davis. But again, AD, with how injury prone he is and being under contract for the next 3 years, making over $40 million is such a huge risk, especially when you already have the injury concerns surrounding Lonzo Ball. That being said though, if Anthony Davis could actually stay healthy, man, that roster, like you mentioned, with Lonzo, DeMar at the 2, which is probably more of a position for him anyway, Patrick at the 3, Anthony Davis at power forward, and Vucevic, that's a pretty solid roster, because people forget when Anthony Davis is healthy, he's one of the best players in the league, a 4-time All-NBA player, 4-time defensive team player, an elite rim protector with an elite offensive game as well. Like, that's exactly someone the Bulls need when it comes to their limited defense and rim protection in the front court. But yeah, it's just too big of a risk, especially when you look at the caliber of player you would be giving up in Zach Lavine, who has been more available than Anthony Davis has. Next, we've got Dread. Zach or DeMar has to be moved in order for Patrick to develop and thrive. He can't do it with 2 of them on the court, let alone the team. He's just too passive with them, as we've seen when they both didn't play, he went off. Well, context is important in this one, because the game in which Patrick went off, which was the last game of the season against the Timberwolves, where Patrick Williams put up 35 points, you have to remember, this was a meaningless regular season game. Both teams had already locked in their playoff seedings. Both teams were resting their best players. So there was really little to no pressure in this one, which is why you saw Patrick get the green light and he played incredibly well. So I wouldn't characterize that as, oh, DeMar and Zach are holding Patrick Williams back because look at what he was able to do when they were off the court. That being said, though, I do think there is some truth in the fact that all the moves that the Bulls made in acquiring Vucevic, then getting Lonzo Ball and DeMar DeRozan in the offseason, as well as Alex Caruso, they brought in more experienced veteran players. And when you do that, you inevitably stunt the growth and development of younger players, in this instance, Patrick Williams, compared to if he was on a rebuilding team. But at the same time, though, some of it is also on Patrick to be more aggressive, be more assertive in asking for the ball, taking more shots, handling the ball. Like both DeMar and Zach have said, they want to see Patrick be more aggressive on the court. And aside from all of that, no, you don't move Zach or DeMar to give Patrick more opportunity to develop. That just wouldn't make sense when you already have 2 established all-stars, and favor that over a younger player who, yes, has a lot of potential, but is still a question mark as far as his overall ceiling. Next, we've got Yusuke Urameshi. Really hope I didn't butcher that. Lowry might have been the scoring punch off the bench that we should have kept instead of Coby. I mean, yes, Lowry would have been a better scoring option off the bench, at least a bit more of a consistent scorer, and he would have given us more size and depth as well, which the Bulls would have needed. But we all know Lowry didn't want that role. He made it pretty clear he didn't want to come off the bench, that he saw himself as a starter in the NBA. And it's why the Bulls worked out a sign and trade. I think they ultimately like the idea of Lowry being a scorer off the bench that gives you size and spacing with his shooting. But Markkanen was looking for a big contract and a bigger role than someone coming off the bench, and that's not something the Bulls were willing to offer. Next, we've got Truco. I wouldn't mind seeing Zach for LaMelo Ball trade hot take. Well, you can certainly give the hot take, but it's not at all a possibility. The Hornets are not going to be giving up LaMelo Ball. They're really building around LaMelo as their franchise player, and given how young he is, his potential, already an all-star at the age of 20, they're not going to trade him for Zach Lavine, who's 27. Nothing against Zach, because we all know Zach is a great player, but it just wouldn't make sense for the Hornets based on what they're trying to build right now with the core around them. Next, we've got Kirk Osgood, Alex Ayo, and Javonte are the only bench players to come back next season. I could see this. I mean, really, when you look at the rest of the Bulls bench, especially with a lot of them set to become free agents, yeah, this wouldn't surprise me. I can't see the Bulls re-signing Troy Brown Jr., who's a free agent. They're definitely not re-signing Matt Thomas, who's a free agent. Tristan Thompson, also an expiring deal. I mean, Derrick Jones Jr. also set to be a free agent. I mean, he's one I could potentially see coming back if they can get him on a favorable contract. The two biggest question marks are really Tony Bradley and Coby White. And I say Tony Bradley because he has a player option for $2 million next season, which I'm sure he's going to take. But I imagine the Bulls are going to try and find to move him if they can. And then there's Coby White, who I've said before, I have a hard time seeing him return to the Bulls next season, mainly because the Bulls have too many guards already. Ayo is a more well-rounded player than Coby is, and Ayo was also an AK draft pick, while Coby was a pick from the old regime. And because Coby is young, still has some potential, you likely can get some decent trade value for him. So anyway, this take isn't that far off because Ayo, Javonte, and Caruso are all going to be under contract, and Javonte especially is on a very favorable deal of less than $2 million. Can't see the Bulls looking to trade him away with the way that he stepped up this season when Patrick Williams was out. Next, we've got Joker. I would give Jordan Poole more money than I would Lavine. Give me a break. Next, we've got DJ PJ on the beat. Let's get Towns for Zach so they can be back together. Well, first, when I read this, I thought you meant let's get Towns in exchange for Zach Lavine, which I would have laughed at. But honestly, this one is still a little laughable too, because how are the Bulls going to get Karl Anthony Towns but still keep Zach? Like, Karl Anthony Towns is not a free agent. You would have to get him in a trade. He's on a max contract. Who are you going to be trading for? Like, I've heard some Bulls fans say, oh, well, we'll just trade Vucevic for Cat. Like, the Wolves aren't going to do that. They're not going to want a 32-year-old Vucevic to a 26-year-old Karl Anthony Towns in the peak of his prime, and especially after the season Vucevic had. Like, I think Vucevic got way more hate from Bulls fans than he deserved this past season, but his trade value is not high after the inconsistent season he just had. Karl Anthony Towns is the Wolves franchise player, their best player. And after having one of the best seasons that Minnesota has seen in years and getting an up-and-coming star in Anthony Edwards, they're not going to want to blow that up. Next, we've got the Benny. Bulls trade Zach, Vooch, Coby, Derrick Jones Jr., and a first-round pick for Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns. Come on now, Benny. Again, why would the Wolves do this? These are their franchise cornerstone pieces, both young, one of which is not even 21 years old yet and is a freak athlete. Why would they ever give up both of these guys for really the only value they're getting out of this in return to Zach Lavine? Because Vucevic doesn't fit their timeline at his age. Coby White is a big downgrade from Anthony Edwards and way too inconsistent. Derrick Jones Jr., a role player who's a free agent, by the way, so they wouldn't even be able to trade him unless this is through a sign and trade. And a first-round pick that is lottery protected and may not even convey if the Blazers continue on the path they have been on. Like, no, come on now, man. No, I always say when looking at trade proposals, you can't just look at it from the Bulls' perspective. You have to look at it from what the other team is getting and what they're trying to do as a franchise for their future. Next, we've got Saigo. Bulls should sign and trade Lavine and Coby White to the Warriors for Poole, Kuminga, and Wiseman. Man, it's a good thing we aren't GMs. I mean, this is slightly more reasonable because Zach would actually fit the Warriors' timeline better, especially when they have a lot of these younger guys who really aren't going to get a chance to develop when the Warriors' big three are trying to make a final run at a title before they set off into the sunset and retirement. But yeah, I can't see the Warriors doing this because of the rise of Jordan Poole this season. They see a lot of potential in him and in his future. And same with Kuminga and Wiseman, who they're really being careful with and making sure he's fully healthy. That's why you saw Wiseman miss the entire season. And then for the Bulls, I mean, in theory, it's not a bad trade, you're kind of messing with timelines again if you're giving up Zach for all these younger players who still have a lot to prove. And really, I mean Kuminga and Wiseman, because Jordan Poole has actually proved a lot. But you're putting more Patrick Williams type players who have potential with DeMar DeRozan and Vucevic, who are more win now pieces. Just doesn't really fit in my view. Anyway, guys, I'm going to end it there for this week. Be sure to leave your hot takes below in the comments to be featured in next week's video. I honestly don't even know when my next upload will be. Everything is kind of up in the air at this point, but I do appreciate you all for staying and supporting the channel. And as always, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I do post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one.